you.
So we're going to move on with another company, Digitalsmiths, that's central to this evolution of discovery and navigation over the cable platform. I'd like to introduce Ben Weinberger, the founder of that company, along with Ranga from Time Warner Cable, who is working on introducing some of these applications to your customers. Thanks, guys, for being here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the stage. So I've talked to you a little bit and gotten to know your company a little bit, Ben, and I sort of associate you with, the end product is simple, sort of. Right? It works, and you can discover content that delights you, and the sausage is hard. I mean, it's really hard to take these data inputs and finesse them into a usable interface. So I guess that's an opening just to talk a little bit about what you guys do and how you go about doing it at Digitalsmiths.
Yeah, absolutely. We take a look at the universe and say, obviously what we want to do is all about discovery and help the consumer find what they want, whether it's search, recommendations, speech, as you just heard, and you will hear next, all these different applications, and there's no one silver bullet. We look at it and say, everybody has the thing that they're going to identify with, which might be, I really love a recommendation, or I really like browsing, I like going through the different processes. Well, you need all of that, and I think the answer is it isn't one thing. So the way to get there is, create this very solid underlying foundation from which you can build on top. I'm actually going to run over and turn a visual on.
Let's do, and maybe while Ben's going over there, Ranga, you can tell us about kind of where Time Warner Cable stands in bringing these solutions to your residential marketplace.
Right. So we face two basic impulses that sort of motivate us towards sort of a unified data model. On the one hand, you have clients or subscribers who come to a video discovery experience across multiple platforms. Right. So we want to sort of retain and engage those clients, and part of that retention requires that we address their discovery needs wherever they are. And then on the flip side of that, on the actual integration and development side, we want to be able to have a really strong reuse case for being able to present once again the same data, the same navigation, the same discovery across those platforms. So this whole notion of a unified data discovery sort of really presents a really great solution for us to imagine a design pattern for our platforms that has clients consuming the same services, and those services providing not just metadata that's consistent across platforms, but a really sort of contextual and almost personalized sense of discovery. And the only way we achieve that is by being able to construct data-driven UIs. So not just driven from the sense that the metadata sources from the cloud, but the navigation itself.
Yeah.
So we think of unified data models as being a combination of just contextual awareness, where is the user, of sort of pervasiveness of the metadata that the user requires. It should be available on all these platforms. And then it's just an ability to decorate that data in a way that's personalized.
I know you're exploring this unified goal with your partner Digitalsmiths. Ben, let's take a look at what you're up to.
First thing I wanted to show is just sort of a view of the world that we have of this notion of unified data, and we recently, last week, announced our unified data service, which is this underlying architecture where we combine all these disparate data types. And one of the issues that you guys are probably all too familiar with, and Ranga just was speaking to, is this idea of you need everything from linear data, VOD data, maybe data you're getting from a third party like Rotten Tomatoes, and you need to bring all of that together. You need to map that to what you have available for your consumers. And if you can do that successfully, which is really the making of the sausage, if you will, and it's very difficult, then you can start building on top of that. So we put unified data service at the foundation of everything and build on top of that with things like our search and recommendations. You could have a speech engine, a mood discovery, social discovery. Today we announced our sports discovery. So there's multiple things that then you can layer on top of that. An example of one visual of kind of trying to give you guys an idea of what the end product ends up with is if you take a look at this screen, you'd say, oh yeah, I recognize something like this. I've got devices that would output this today. What's underlying this, though, is a tremendous amount of data. There's everything, if you break this down from the title, cast, crew, artwork, the VOD availability, places you can get that over the top, places you can get that on your linear schedule. You might bring in ratings if it's a movie from third party like Rotten Tomatoes. You might bring in critic reviews, all sorts of information that you build a rich UI on top of just to get the basics down, let alone saying, well, here's some other titles you might like. Here's some other recommendations. Here's a way that you can search this. So if you create that underlying structure, you now have a very solid foundation from which to build upon. We find that in the marketplace today, that's something that just not really being addressed. There's individual companies that have tried to take that on inside of the MVPD or inside of the service provider, spending a lot of time and resources doing that. And that's where Digitalsmiths has been able to come in and say, we've done that already. We've mapped these sources together. You can get to market much faster. You can build and deploy these experiences like what Ranga was describing in a time frame and on a device and a platform that you choose. So whether you're doing it on an iPad, on a set-top box, on a device like a Roku or an Xbox, you now have a common framework from which to build, which turn it back over to Ranga to talk a little bit about some of their experience also.
Right. So what we have here is a single screenshot from our online video portal. And the key thing here that's sort of very subtle, because it doesn't really call out the user name, is that we're making recommendations to that are targeted to a specific user, right? And how we intuit or derive whom that user is in this case sort of passively done. But the key thing is, as we think about what drives and engages subscribers to content and really sort of keeps them within our circle and walled garden, is this ability to be able to sort of use the data that we're deriving on what they're consuming and then try to make recommendations and ultimately discovery out of those recommendations, a really ROI positive experience for them. And in this case, this is really customized recommendations, the same customized recommendations that the same subscriber would see across all of the platforms that we deliver, TWC TV and in the future HNAV.
So if you look today at where we're deploying and what the customers are coming to us for, it always starts off with, I want a recommendation engine. And that's kind of the common ask. And some of you have probably gone through your RFI and RFP processes like that. And what you end up working backwards and saying, oh, I can't deploy what I wanted. I realize I can't have that recommendation engine until I have all these data inputs coming in. Or my search can't be made to surface the kind of results I want. I can't get what the user expects. In your mind, search should just work. And when you type something in, you should get back what you expect. It should be obvious. There shouldn't be any guessing as to why you got that result. And that's what Digitalsmiths is able to deliver. When you combine those data inputs and you do a search, it is exactly what you think of from that respect. And you shouldn't have to be restricted to only searching for a title. Like if you were to look at one of these like The Walking Dead, you shouldn't have to type in Walking Dead. Maybe somebody told you about that zombie show and you can't remember it and you type in zombie show, or somebody told you it was an AMC zombie show and you typed in AMC zombie. Any combination of things you can think of, you should be able to input that and come back with the result you think of. Cast, crew, characters, actors, scenes, phrases they said, all of that information goes into powering a really enhanced and next generation user experience. So that's what we're doing today at Digitalsmiths. That's how we're trying to focus the conversation around creating this underlying infrastructure that Ranga's talked about and that they're taking advantage of. And I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, or?
No, I think that's great.
Okay.
The only other thing here is that as you see this interface here, nothing about it except perhaps the left rail is not dynamically configured. So anything on the right here reflects things that are dynamically constituted based on whom the user is, what they've consumed before. And none of that is possible without really thinking about the underlying data model which powers this.
Ranga brought up a good point also, where this is customized for a specific user. The idea of not just customizing for a user, but potentially more than one user in a household and blending recommendations so that when mom and dad sit down, or mom and son, or father, son, father, daughter, or the whole family, getting something that works for everybody is a key component to this. And in our booth, back that direction, 1715, we can show you this and how this works, and show you the idea of an individual user as well as a group of users, and all these different types of discovery experiences, from mood-based and sports, search, recommendations, any of these experiences that are, as Ranga said, very dynamically generated, which is, I think, key to making the consumer find and help them get to what they want as the world of content only gets larger and larger.
Ben, we've got maybe a minute to go, but I just wanted to ask you to touch on a subject that I think is interesting. Come on back. There's so much talk about filtering social media chatter to help divine what people are interested in watching on television. And I think you have maybe a little bit of a counterpoint to the value of those inputs. I just wanted to open the door for discussion of where does that fit into the brew of coming up with tailored recommendation?
Right, so I don't think we see social as an sort of immediate entry point into video, at least not in the near term. I think we see it as a source for trending content initially. But also I think there's a reality out there that, subscribers have self-elected to accept social media as the primary store for their personalized data, and would be somewhat remiss if we didn't follow them through that in being able to understand how else do they connect to media. So as a sort of second entry point, as a second sort of stage gate in the evolution of discovery, we certainly see social.
So it has a role. It has a role to play, but it may not be. It's maybe a blunt instrument, I guess, is what it sort of sounds like.
It is, and I think it goes back to that initial comment of there's no one silver bullet, and it's an element that might help you find what you want. As an example, today we're taking approximately 1 million social data points every 24 hours to look for trending and mapping that back to the linear schedule, building that into the unified data service to make that data available. But that's just one element that somebody might choose to use, and it may or may not be something that you as a consumer identify with.
Well, guys, thanks for sharing some of what the good work you're doing on discovery. Appreciate you having you here, Ranga and Ben, and we'll wish you well out.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.